in Ecclesiastes. I'll get you to turn with me to page 472, or Ecclesiastes chapter 9. We're just going to read 3 verses. Ecclesiastes chapter 9, and verses 5, 6 and 10. As you can see, Ecclesiastes is one of the books that I open up from that. There we go. Starting in verse 5 of Ecclesiastes chapter 9. For the living know that they will die, but the dead know nothing. They have no further reward, and even the money, the memory of them is forgotten. Their love, their hate, and their jealousy have long since vanished. Never again will they have a part in anything that happens under the sun. Verse 10. Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. For in the grave, where you are going, there is neither working, nor playing, nor knowledge, nor wisdom. The Bible is very, very clear that when we die, there is a stopping and an end point. But how we define it as Christians, or how we define it prior to Christ, is found in the Holy Word, the Scriptures. You know, in Daniel, in Job, in David, in Jeremiah, and the list could go on and on and on in the Old Testament. Death is always referred to as sleep. Always. Then when Christ came along, it shouldn't be a surprise to us that he also describes death as sleep. I would like to reflect on a story this morning. It's found in John chapter 11, and we'll just read 3 verses. John chapter 11, from verses 11 to 14, page 758. It's the story of Lazarus. It's the story of a man who was loved by Jesus Christ. He was one of Jesus' friends, one of his closest friends. The story continues that Lazarus gets sick. Jesus is not in town that day, he's away. He's ministering. And the word comes to Jesus, your friend Lazarus is sick. And then the message comes, Jesus, your friend Lazarus has died. Lazarus' sisters had sent messages to Jesus urgently. Because that's what you do when you have a friend who loves you. And they knew that Jesus could do the impossible. Lazarus is dead. Starting in verse 11. After he had said this, he went to tell them, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I am going there to wake him up. Now, this is a strange response by Jesus. Because when we get a phone call that somebody has passed away, as pastors, perhaps our first thing is, can I come around and visit you? And when we come around and visit, then we just listen and questions are asked, we try and help. But Jesus' response to Lazarus' death is, he's fallen asleep and I am coming to wake him up. His disciples replied, Lord, if he sleeps, he will get better. Jesus had been speaking of his death, but his disciples thought he meant sleep. In this passage, the story continues. Lazarus is in the grave. Linen has been wrapped around him. Ointments and smelling perfumes have been put on him because his body would have been beginning to decompose and smell. Not 1, not 2, 3, but 4 days later, Jesus finally gets to this little town. And when he arrives, the story tells us in John 11 that there was great wailing and crying, and he walks through all of this and he's looking at it and he's experiencing what we as humans call the funeral or the wake or just the sorrow of death. And as he's walking through it and experiencing it, we're one of the most powerful passages in Scripture. In verse 35 of chapter 11, the Lord was seeing what was happening and Jesus wept. Jesus didn't just weep for what was happening to Lazarus. Jesus was weeping because he could see and he understood what death was about. Jesus wept. Then Jesus moves through the crowd and he comes, finds the family. They go out to the graveside or to the tomb. And Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead. Now this scripture is massively important because death is something that we all face. But through Jesus Christ, He has given us the power that one day we'll live again. When I sat in that little chapel that day, that's what I needed to hear. I needed to be reminded that in Jesus Christ we have hope. That in Jesus Christ, He was not only the one who breathed life into a bit of dust that was formed into a human being, but one day soon He could return and turn something that is lifeless into something that is living and vibrant again. Something that was designed by the Creator of the universe to live and to live eternally, everlasting, immortal. That's how we were designed. I'd like to look at Romans chapter 5 and 6. As Zach and Travis head to the water. It's page 796. Chapter 5 and verse 12. Therefore, just as sin entered the world through one man,